because it was not a human consciousness that Kant's robot represented. But philosophers accepted it as such. And while they cried that reason had been invalidated, they did not notice that reason had been pushed off the philosophical scene altogether, and that the faculty they were arguing about was not reason. So whatever Kant says has been invalidated, if it has indeed been invalidated by this argument, it's not reason that they're talking about. So they go off and say reason's invalidated, and then they go do all kinds of crazy things with that premise. They weren't even talking about reason. Immanuel Kant's system is not talking about reason. No, Kant did not destroy reason. He merely did as thorough a job of undercutting as anyone could ever do. Now, if you trace the roots of all our current philosophies, such as pragmatism, logical positivism, and all the rest of the neo-mystics who announce happily that you cannot prove that you exist, you will find that they all grew out of Immanuel Kant. That's why we hold him as the destroyer of the modern world. Continuing down just a bit, one of Immanuel Kant's major goals was to save religion, including the essence of religious morality, from the onslaughts of science. His system represents a massive effort to raise the principles of Platonism in a somewhat altered form, once again to a position of commanding authority over Western culture. And he certainly did that. That's from Leonard Peikoff's Ominous Parallels, page 23. Now, as to Immanuel Kant's ethics, skipping down a bit, and this again is a quote from For the New Intellectual, page 33. As to Kant's version of morality, it was appropriate to the kind of zombies that would inhabit that kind of Kantian universe. It consisted of total, abject selflessness. An action is moral, said Immanuel Kant, only if one has no desire to perform it. You perform it out of a sense of duty and derive no benefit from it of any sort, neither material nor spiritual. Any benefit at all. A benefit destroys the moral value of an action. Any benefit destroys the moral value of the action. Thus, if one has no desire to be evil, one cannot be good. If one does have a desire to be evil, then it is possible to be good. Quite a paradox. Those who accept any part of Kant's philosophy, metaphysical, epistemological, or moral, deserve it. Now, this little bit here will explain maybe to Mr. Heltzerman. He's really baffled at how everyone could be Kantian, and yet nobody knows anything about Kant. No one's ever read Kant. There's a few people in the universities who say a few things about Kant, but the fact that the whole world is Kantian and our culture is Kantian, Mr. Heltzerman is just blown away by this. He thinks it's hilarious and he can't grasp it. So let's take a look at that just a bit here. Kant's view of morality is propagated by men who have never heard of him. Never heard of him. He merely gave them a formal academic status. A Kantian sense of duty is inculcated by parents whenever they declare that a child must do something because he must do it. A child brought up under the constant battering of causeless, arbitrary, contradictory, inexplicable musts loses or never acquires the ability to grasp the distinction between realistic necessity and human whim. And he spends his life abjectly, dutifully obeying the second and defying the first. Obeying human whims and defying reality. In the full meaning of the term, he grows up without a clear grasp of reality. Now you wonder how we can get in the 20th century systems like Soviet Russia, where everybody is a loser. Nobody won. In Russia, everyone was worse off. And I even mean the dictators were worse off in Russia than they could have been in a free society. The government officials, the high-up bureaucrats, the guys who owned the jails, you know, the head of the KGB or whatever, all those people, even the people in the top echelons of Russia, lived in Russia. It's an important point because Russia was a big stink pot. Nothing good was going on there, and millions and millions and millions of people were killed. Now, how can you get a system that is implemented on the basis of morality? Right? Lenin wanted a moral society, a la Marx. And the result is nobody benefits at all. How could that happen? Well, we're just about to see right here. If men lived the sort of life Kant demands, who or what would gain from it? Now remember, Immanuel Kant says you have to act out of duty, and any benefit to your actions erases the moral nature of your action. If you benefit in any way, even a spiritual way. So who would benefit? Nothing and nobody would benefit. The concept of gain has been expunged from morality. For Kant, it is the dutiful sacrifice as such that constitutes a man's claim to virtue. You're virtuous because you sacrifice, because you act on duty. That gets you your virtue. Did your action help somebody? Did your action help yourself? Doesn't matter. It's out of the question. In fact, if it did help you, you're not moral. You have to act out of a sense of duty, and you have to gain nothing from your action in order for your action to have moral status. For Kant, it is the dutiful sacrifice as such that constitutes a man's claim to virtue. The welfare of any recipient is morally incidental. Virtue for Kant is not the service of an interest, neither of the self, nor of God, nor of others. Virtue is not servicing an interest. Kant does not believe that virtue is to do something good for something or somebody. Kant does not believe that. He believes that virtue is what? A man can claim moral credit for service to others in this view, not because they benefit, but only insofar as he loses. So it's not even a question of whether the people you're acting for benefit. It's the question of whether the person who's acting is doing so out of a duty from which they gain nothing. That's Kant's moral basis. Can't gain anything. Whether or not the person benefits isn't even in the question, as long as you don't benefit. Here is the essence and climax of the ethics of self-sacrifice. Finally, after 2,000 years, come to full philosophic expression in the Western world. Your interests, of whatever kind, including the interest in being moral, are a mark of moral imperfection because they are interests. Now, I once heard this stated about a priest, and someone said, "Why do you go with prostitutes and drink and stuff?" And he said, if I were completely moral, if I never sinned at all, then I would be sinning because I would be proud of my virtue. So the way he saw it, you're sin no matter what. You're evil, and why not do something you enjoy? So if that's what morality is a scarecrow to chase away all your pleasures, you know, that's just perfect Kantianism right there. Your desires, regardless of their content, deserve no respect because they are desires. Do your duty, which is yours because you have desires, and which is sublime because, unaltered by the stigma of any gain, it shines forth unsullied in loss, pain, conflict, and torture. It's virtuous because you didn't gain. Sacrifice the thing that you want without beneficiaries, supernatural or social. Kant did not believe you had to sacrifice for God or for your fellow men. He believed you had to sacrifice yourself. Sacrifice your values, your self-interest, your happiness, yourself, because they are your values, because they are your self-interest, your happiness, yourself. Sacrifice them to morality.